Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Snowfall, Season 4, Episode 7, entitled Through a Glass Darkly. I'm going to talk about the episode title for a little bit because I think it ties into what I consider to be the big scene of the episode. I kind of like to look into titles because a lot of times it's pretty obvious what they mean. Like, for instance, I believe the title for next week's episode is Betrayal. So, I mean, you know what betrayal is. You can kind of get a pretty good idea of what might happen in that episode. There's probably going to be some heavy shit going down. But when you have one like this, you kind of wonder, like, why did they decide to name the episode this? So, at the end of the episode, Franklin, Sissy, and Alton kind of have it out. Alton is basically snitched to Irene, the reporter, and is pretty much told, it seems, everything about everything. From what Franklin's been doing to what Reed/Teddy has been doing. It seems like he spilled the beans on the whole thing. We see Irene writing up her story at the end. She's celebrating, like, this is the story that makes careers, all that kind of shit, right? So, Alton tells Sissy about it. Sissy tells Franklin. The three of them kind of have it out. Really, really great scene. You know, Alton said something that I thought was really deep when he mentioned that, you know, black people have survived so much, and he runs off a list of all the things that black people have been through and that they've survived. And he said something like, "But I don't know if we can survive this. The government, you know, poisoning our people essentially, and you helping them do it, Franklin." Like that was like a crazy scene to say that, you know, I feel like black people are facing a fight that they can't win against the government poisoning us, and you my son, you are helping them do this. Like, that's got to be some heavy shit to deal with. And, you know, he's a religious dude now, so he's grappling with all of that. So after that moment, Franklin pistol whips him and knocks him down, and he says a portion of what is ultimately a Bible verse. Because, like I said, I like to know what these titles mean sometimes, so I took the opportunity to look it up. And after he says it, Franklin says something like this poetry bullshit. But it's really a Bible verse. So I'm going to read the Bible verse. I'm going to tell you what I think that means. So it's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 12. It says, "For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know, even as also I am known." The way I look at that is essentially, and Alton only said the first part. He said, "For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face." The way I look at that and the way I interpret him choosing to say that verse in that moment is essentially him kind of saying, like, you know, I haven't seen things clearly up to this point, but now I see kind of like what needs to be done. I see the reality of things, you know, like, which is essentially like, you know, all of this is coming down. I'm trying to get us out before it comes down on us. And I think he looked at it as essentially like, you know, I sacrificed our relationship. Like, you know, I facilitated this moment, you know, taking this loss for the greater good of getting the three of us out of here. So I think that's when he chose to say that verse in that moment. I look at that as him kind of saying, like, you know, I didn't know what, you know, I chose to look the other way. I didn't really know what was going on, but now I see things clearly. I see that, you know, this is out of control and that, you know, I needed to do something about it to save us. And yeah, you might not like me right now. You might be pissed off, but, like, I'm doing this not just to save the three of us, but, like, to save to save our race, because my own son is trying to kill him off. And I thought that was really poignant, and I thought that was a really good scene before I looked up the Bible verse, but I think it resonates a little bit more when you realize, you know, or at least when you reflect upon, because that's just my interpretation, when you reflect upon what he meant in that moment and why he said that. And that's why I like to look into the episode title sometimes. Like I said, sometimes it's pretty obvious, sometimes not so much. So I thought that was a really good scene. In my notes up to that point, I had put that this was kind of like a slow episode, because, like, the last episode had some really good character beats. Like, we got to see some really good emotional moments. We got to see some really good acting performances. And this episode didn't have that up until that point. So, like, I guess kind of like circling back around, I thought this was a solid episode. I didn't think it was a great episode. I think this is probably the weakest episode of the season so far. And when I say that, that's not an insult, because I feel like this season has been the best season, I believe, to date. And I feel like every episode has been really, really good, including this one. I just think that this was the least of the 7 so far. And part of the reason for that is, again, this almost felt like a placeholder episode. Like, we didn't really advance anyone's storyline very much in this episode. And then it didn't. If you have episodes like that, that's cool, but then you need to kind of counterbalance that with either some really good stuff to kind of like counterbalance the plotting of the pacing, or just have, like, maybe like a really big scene at the end or something like that, but something to make people feel like they didn't just sit there and kind of just like not really gain much from that hour of television. And they had a couple of other issues too. So like, that's another thing, is like, I feel like the episode kind of needs to be, if it's not going to really move things along at a moderate pace, if it's going to be at a slower pace, it needs to essentially be perfect in construction otherwise. So and that's kind of why I said that I feel like this episode is the least of the 7 so far, because I had other issues too. Like, I feel like, I mentioned, I think in the beginning of this season's coverage, so the video that I recorded for episodes 1 and 2, that my biggest issue with Snowfall up to this point was the essentially uninteresting aspect, which was the Gustavo, Reed, Lucia kind of thing that they had going on. I just like that side of the storyline. They just could never. It just seemed like they didn't put any effort into it. And I thought that this year they've done a really good job with the Reed stuff, Reed and Gustavo. But that story has had a weird transition. Like, we've seen them. Then they had the issue with the sheriff in Tijuana. Then they had the issue with him having that sheriff killing his brother and sister-in-law, and then the missing kids or whatever. And then Reed had the missing guns, and then he had the situation with his father and his brother, and it just kind of seems like this episode, like their storyline has been like a new kind of storyline every couple of episodes, whereas like you look on the Franklin side of things, it's been the same story the whole time. But this episode really was just Reed being coked out, and just like, I don't know, just having conversations with Avi. Like, I didn't find this week. And then like Gustavo, like, just, he shows up to do a deal with Franklin. Franklin asked about Reed, nothing going there. Franklin calls to try to talk to Reed. Gustavo picks up. So like, they threw in a couple scenes to let us know that that Franklin is looking for Reed, and that was it. So like, not really too much there. The conversation between Reed and Avi were uninteresting to me, like kind of dull. So like, not much there. Gustavo did nothing this week. And then this episode didn't get good until Reed apparently decided to break into this guy's home and waterboard him to try to find out what he did with his money, even though his money had already been replaced. So like, I feel like there's a part of me that feels like Reed being coked up is causing him to make bad decisions. Like, this might not even be the right guy. Like, maybe this guy didn't even do anything. Oh, and also, you don't just go into people's houses and waterboard them. So I feel like that's causing Reed to make bad decisions. But there's also the skeptic in me that is still kind of wondering, like, is it that like they wrapped it up too easy? Like the woman at the bank is like, oh yeah, this guy, he tried to get off with some of your money, but we just put 50, we just credited it back to you. Done. Like, man. Like that, like when he's dealing with that level, that large amount of money, with arms trading and arms dealing, and you're dealing with people like Avi and like all this criminal, dirty shit, and you think that somebody can just steal $15 million and be like, yeah, we just gave it back, it's cool. And no, man. Like, so I feel Teddy for being skeptical, but again, you don't break into just somebody's house like that. But I think he's probably right to be skeptical. But that aspect of it didn't get interesting until the end of the episode. So the Reed stuff was kind of slow. The episode as a whole was kind of slow. We had one scene with Man-Boy. Scully wasn't even in the episode. Apparently, this bounty that Khadijah has put out on, not just Leon, apparently on everybody. I thought it was on just Leon. And then when Jerome asked the person, this girl who pulled the gun out on Leon, what she knew about the bounty, apparently it's on everybody. So Man-Boy wasn't happy about that. So it's kind of like we got like a little bit of information in each storyline, but like nothing to really throttle things forward. But with like 3 episodes left, the next one called Betrayal, I feel like it's really gonna, like, I mean, Franklin's getting pulled from all angles at this point. He's got Manboy and Scully he's got to deal with. They, want to kill Leon and him and everybody else. He's got to deal with where the fuck is Reed? Like he's coked out. I don't know where he is. I'm trying to get out. Like everything's going crazy. I can't find him. And now he's got to deal with his own family, his own father, telling everything to a reporter. So it's like everything is crashing down on him right now. And I'm curious to see, and most of it is his fault, by the way, but I'm curious to see how or if he gets out of this. I think putting Franklin back in prison is not compelling. So I feel like something's got to happen. One thing that there's one last thing I want to talk about, and I wonder if this is going to tie into it. And shout out to my homeboy Otis for kind of like putting this thought in my head, because I think this could be a direction that they're going. But throughout this season, we've seen Jerome become consistently dissatisfied with everything that Franklin's doing. They planted a seed early with, and I talked about this in the video that I did on this episode, where Manboy, it's just one scene, and Manboy just kind of says something like, "Yeah, shit was sweet until Franklin came back," and it's like that's all it was. But that scene planted that seed of doubt or questioning in Jerome's mind, and I thought Louis' mind too. But then, I think it kind of came to a head when Louis told him last week that basically everything about Reed being CIA and all that kind of shit. And I feel like Jerome at this point is fed up and he wants out. He was brought in this week to kind of like help Leon to deal with Fatback's cousin. I thought that was a well-handled scene, but I think that they're showing us right now that Jerome is unhappy, but like kind of like just soldiering through and just doing as he's told. And it makes me wonder if at some point, like you kind of like to, like shows like this, like to give characters this arc where it's like they start off shitty, and just as they start to decide to do the right thing, they're done and they're dead. And it's like, oh man, that he was just about to do the right thing and now he's dead. And I feel like that could be Jerome's angle here. Like, I said at the beginning of the season that I felt that the discontent that they were showing between Leon and Franklin was angling toward Leon's death, but it seems now that Leon's death has become too obvious. So like I'm taking that off the table, because like that happens. It's like, okay, well, we saw that happen. I feel like that kind of needs to be shocking if it happens. I was about to say when, but if it happens. But this seems to be like that kind of character arc for Jerome, where he's becoming increasingly dissatisfied with everything that's going on. He's pushing through it anyway. And now when given the opportunity to do something good, aka help Leon handle this situation with Fatback's cousin, he does it and he does a good job. And I feel like he's getting smart. He's seeing how things are going. He's becoming increasingly frustrated, and I feel like he's gonna get to a point where he like kind of like in The Godfather or something, where somebody says, "Okay, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore," and then they end up dead. Like, oh, it's like like that cliche, like tomorrow's my last day. After 20 years on the force, I've survived all these battles. And I've made it through, and tomorrow I retire, and I'll spend the rest of my life with my wife, and we're gonna have a good time, and then bam, he dies on the last day. Like, I feel like that could be where Jerome's angle is heading. Kind of like, like I see where this is going. This is all bad. I want out. I want to do the right thing. Like, we're doing the wrong thing. I'm good, and then bam, he's dead. So that could be a really good angle for Jerome. So curious to see where that ends up. We still got to deal with the bounty on the crew. So there's so much going on, so many different angles that Franklin's being pulled toward. So lots to see in these last 3 episodes. I'm really excited for this next one called Betrayal, because you can't just call an episode Betrayal and just throw out some old bullshit. Like, it's got to be fire. So I'll see you guys next week for episode 8, Betrayal. Rate, comment, share, subscribe. Leave any comments you have below. Tweet them to me at One Mic Network. Whatever you want to do, email me at One Mic Podcast. You can find this on a podcast feed if for some reason you're somehow watching this YouTube video and realizing you don't like watching YouTube videos. There's a podcast feed for it too. You can search One Mic on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So until next week, peace.